10 female weaknesses you can master to gain the upper hand. Stoic Bloom. They say men are simple and women are complicated. But what if he's told you complexity is predictable once you know where to look? What if the very things she hides, denies, or dismisses are actually the pressure points that unlock control? And what if mastering her emotional triggers isn't about manipulation, but about showing up with unshakable presence that makes her feel seen, yet uncertain? At the same time, Section 1, the need for validation. Validation is often misunderstood as flattery, but in truth, it's one of the most powerful emotional currencies in a woman's world. Society has conditioned women to seek external approval in almost everything, from beauty standards and social media likes, to the way they measure their worth in romantic attention. Most men don't realize this. They hand out compliments like candy, thinking it builds attraction, but instead, it creates the opposite effect: devaluation. When validation is too easy, it loses its impact. When given too often, it becomes noise. But when a man offers validation intentionally, with clarity, presence, and precision, it feels rare, personal, irreplaceable. So how do you offer validation the Stoic way? First, only validate what is truly worth praising. Not out of manipulation, but from observation. Instead of saying, "You look great," say, "There's something about the way that color frames your shoulders. It's subtle, but it works." The detail makes the difference. It proves you're present. It shows you see her, not just her appearance. Second, realize that validation isn't just verbal. When you listen without checking your phone, when you hold her gaze without trying to fix her problems, when you're still, composed, and present, you validate her without saying a word. That kind of presence is addictive. But here's the warning: never let validation flow in only one direction. If she expects constant affirmation but never gives it in return, she's not connecting, she's consuming. A Stoic man values himself too much to be someone else's emotional vending machine. He gives only what aligns with truth and never to earn approval. Validation done right doesn't make you look desperate. It makes you look discerning. Still complimenting her dress, hoping she'll notice your soul. It's time to stop being generous with your self-respect. Hit subscribe to Stoic Bloom, where your words matter because your silence means something. Section 2, the emotional reaction trap. Women don't just hear what you say, they watch how you react. A subtle sigh, a flinch, a defensive tone. These are the invisible signs that reveal more than your words ever could. And trust me, she notices all of it. Many women, consciously or not, test emotional boundaries. They drop remarks that seem playful, poke at your priorities, or withdraw attention without explanation. These aren't random behaviors. They're subtle emotional probes to see what you're made of. Men who lack emotional discipline fall into the trap instantly. They overreact. They defend themselves. They explain endlessly. And worst of all, they seek to please rather than remain composed. A Stoic man understands this game and refuses to play it. When she says something like, "You're always so busy, maybe I should find someone with more time," most men would rush to explain their schedule, their love, their guilt. But the Stoic response is calm, almost amused. "I'm sure you'll do what's best for you." That response does two things. First, it removes emotional leverage. Second, it shows unshakable self-respect, because silence, stillness, and controlled speech are power. Another critical element is consistency. If she keeps bringing up the same emotional triggers, your work schedule, your priorities, your ambition, it's not always about logistics. It's about whether you'll cave or stay centered. A man who reacts is predictable. A man who remains grounded is unforgettable. Epictetus wrote, "It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." Your opinion about her tests will determine whether they control you or strengthen you. Let her test, let her question, but never let her provoke a reaction you'll later regret. In a world full of men trying to explain themselves, be the one who simply doesn't flinch. Section 3. The desire for security. Security is one of the deepest emotional needs in a woman's psyche, but not in the way most men think. It's not just about money, protection, or stability. It's about consistency, direction, the quiet confidence that says, "I've got this," without ever needing to say it. You see, security to her isn't always tangible. It's not the size of your bank account or the locks on your door. It's the strength of your presence, the steadiness of your decisions, the fact that your emotions don't swing with her moods. Most men compromise their strength to create comfort. They cancel their plans to avoid tension. They change their boundaries to keep her happy. They think safety means softness, but it doesn't. It means certainty. Certainty in who you are, certainty in what you'll tolerate, certainty in your path. A woman feels secure with a man not because he says, "I love you" every day, but because his words and actions align over time. He doesn't make promises, he becomes proof. When you're clear about your purpose, rooted in your values, and emotionally resilient, she can rest. She knows chaos won't shake you. And ironically, that's what makes you magnetic. The Stoics knew this long before modern psychology. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A man's worth is no greater than the worth of his ambitions." When your ambition is built on principle, not popularity, you don't need to ask for trust. You are the trust. So don't aim to make her feel safe by walking on eggshells. Make her feel safe by walking with conviction. Still texting "good morning" just to prove you care? That's not security. That's seeking approval in disguise. Subscribe to Stoic Bloom and start building a presence so grounded, she won't just feel safe, she'll feel lucky. Section 4. The pull of curiosity. Curiosity is one of the most underrated forces in attraction. Not drama, not chaos, just the subtle itch that whispers, "There's more to him than I know." Most men kill curiosity early. They overshare. They explain everything. They show their entire emotional deck within the first few conversations, thinking that transparency equals connection. But when everything is given too soon, nothing holds value. The mystery dies, and along with it, desire. Curiosity doesn't mean playing games or withholding truth. It means revealing yourself in layers, slowly, intentionally. Like a book she can't put down, because every chapter makes her more invested. A Stoic man doesn't feel the need to prove himself through disclosure. He knows that depth isn't spoken, it's sensed. And when he speaks, it's not to be understood in full. It's to leave something unsaid, unfinished, intriguing. She doesn't need to know your entire childhood trauma in the first week. She needs to know that you've been through things and came out stronger. That strength, laced with subtle silence, creates gravity. You don't have to be cold, just controlled. You don't have to be distant, just discerning. When you're able to say, "That's a story for another time," with a calm smile, you're not deflecting. You're inviting her deeper. Seneca wrote, "The most powerful is he who has himself in his own power." That includes your words, your pace, your personal narrative. Let her earn access to you, not out of arrogance, but out of respect. Because what's rare must remain protected if it's ever going to be truly valued. Section 5. The fear of losing control. One of the most overlooked psychological triggers in women is the fear of losing control. Not in an abusive or domineering sense, but in the quiet shift of power when she realizes she doesn't influence you like she used to. In the beginning of many relationships, women often lead with emotional expression, and men follow with accommodation. He adapts, adjusts, apologizes, even when he hasn't done anything wrong, because he thinks harmony equals love. But what he's really doing is giving away authority. The more you bend to avoid tension, the more control she gains, not through manipulation, but through response. And the more control she feels, the less polarity exists. And without polarity, attraction fades. Women don't desire a man they can manage. They desire a man they can respect. A stoic man doesn't give control to avoid discomfort. He stays rooted even when the storm hits. He doesn't escalate or retreat. He holds his frame, not out of ego but out of principle. So when she tests your limits, don't flinch. When she challenges your time, don't fold. When she pushes, hold steady. Because the moment she realizes you won't trade your standards for her approval, that's when she begins to recalibrate her own behavior around yours. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That same filter applies to how you give your power away. If it's not aligned with who you are, don't submit to it. Remember, attraction isn't created through submission. It's sustained through strength. Still folding your schedule just to squeeze in her drama? Subscribe to Stoic Bloom and learn how to say no, like a man who doesn't fear losing her, but fears losing himself. Section 6. The power of independence. There's something irresistibly attractive about a man who doesn't need anyone, especially the woman he's with. Not in a cold, dismissive way, but in the quiet confidence of someone whose life is already full, already purposeful, already meaningful, with or without her. Most men lose their power not because they're too emotional, but because they're too available. They abandon their routines, their friendships, their priorities, all in the name of love. And in doing so, they become absorbed into her world instead of remaining centered in their own. But here's the truth. Independence isn't optional. It's not a bonus trait. It's foundational. A stoic man is not anti-connection. He simply refuses to collapse into it. He protects his time. He keeps his own counsel. And he never allows intimacy to replace identity. When you remain independent in thought, schedule, and self-worth, you don't just become harder to control, you become harder to forget. You don't need to explain your plans. You just follow through. You don't need permission to grow. You grow because that's what you do. You don't need constant validation to feel loved. You already love the man you're becoming. Seneca once wrote, "He is most powerful who has power over himself." That includes your time, your attention, your emotional access. The man who is willing to walk alone, calm, focused, unwavering, is the man who never has to beg for company. He is the gravity in every room, precisely because he never tries to be. Section 7. The desire for growth. There's a kind of man who doesn't need to impress women because his evolution speaks louder than any pickup line ever could. Growth is magnetic. It's not loud. It's not flashy, but it's undeniable, and women can feel it. Most men plateau. They stop reading, stop building, stop striving. They settle into routines, hoping consistency alone will maintain attraction. But consistency without progress becomes stagnation. and stagnation kills polarity. A woman may admire the man you are today, but she'll stay curious about the man you're becoming. This is why a Stoic man views growth not as an option, but as identity. He doesn't chase success to impress. He chases mastery because he's built that way. He's constantly refining his discipline, upgrading his mindset, and testing his limits, not for applause, but for alignment. And here's a secret: the more you grow, the more she grows. Not because you force her to, but because you inspire her to. Your presence becomes a mirror, a silent challenge, a gravitational pull that calls her to level up. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." A Stoic man doesn't avoid resistance, he moves through it. And every time he does, he becomes harder to replace. Still texting her your goals instead of actually achieving them? Subscribe to Stoic Bloom, where growth isn't a flex, it's a way of life. Section 8, the strength of mystery. Mystery isn't about hiding, it's about holding. Holding space, holding silence, holding back just enough to make her lean in. Most men rush to be understood. They pour out their stories, struggles, and successes in a desperate attempt to prove they're worthy of love. But in doing so, they erase one of the most powerful forces in attraction: mystery. Mystery doesn't mean being secretive or manipulative. It means allowing space between the questions and the answers. It means choosing when to reveal and when to withhold. It means letting her feel that there's still something about you she hasn't figured out and might never fully figure out. That feeling is intoxicating. A Stoic man understands that being fully known too soon often leads to being taken for granted. He reveals himself in layers, not because he's afraid, but because he's intentional. He knows that curiosity must be fed in portions, not flooded. He leaves pauses in conversation. He doesn't fill silence with noise. He lets his actions speak and his restraint become the message. Seneca reminds us, "Nothing is more honorable than a grateful heart, but that gratitude must be earned. And what is earned too easily is rarely appreciated." Let her lean in, let her ask, let her wonder, because in a world where everyone's trying to be seen, the one who's calmly unread is the one who stays unforgettable. Section 9, the value of boundaries. There's nothing more attractive than a man who knows where he begins and where he ends. Boundaries aren't walls, they're definitions. They don't push people away. They show people where to meet you. And for women, especially those who are used to getting their way, boundaries are both frustrating and irresistible. A man without boundaries becomes a mirror. He reflects what she wants, says what she needs, adapts to every emotion, and eventually she stops respecting him. Not out of cruelty, but biology. Respect requires resistance. When you say no without flinching, when you guard your time like it matters, when you pause before giving access to your body, your emotions, or your energy, she doesn't feel rejected. She feels challenged. And challenge, when paired with composure, is the foundation of male polarity. A Stoic man doesn't explain his standards. He lives them. He doesn't threaten to walk away. He simply doesn't stay where respect is absent. His presence is earned, not bought with approval. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And if your thoughts are rooted in self-worth, your boundaries will reflect it, clearly, calmly, and without compromise. Still ghosting yourself just to stay available for her drama? Subscribe to Stoic Bloom, where we teach men to build boundaries so strong, even their past can't cross them. Section 10. The art of emotional detachment. Detachment is not about indifference, it's about clarity. To be detached is not to care less, but to care correctly. It means loving without losing yourself, giving without chasing, staying present without being consumed. Most men confuse attachment with commitment. They think intensity equals intimacy. That clinging means loyalty. But the truth is, anything that owns you emotionally can eventually break you. A Stoic man understands this. He loves with full presence, but also full awareness. He knows that emotions are not meant to be repressed, but they must be governed. When you're emotionally detached, you stop seeking control over outcomes. You stop fearing loss. You stop overreacting to silence, withdrawal, or emotional storms. Instead, you become the calm. You stop being the storm chaser and start being the mountain. As Epictetus taught, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. And there's no freedom without emotional discipline. So if she pulls away, detachment gives you space. If she comes closer, detachment gives you balance. And no matter what happens, it gives you peace. If you've come this far, you're not just looking for answers. You're ready for alignment. You're tired of noise, of drama, of feeling like your worth depends on someone else's affection. You're ready to reclaim your place in the world, not with force, but with silence that speaks, with presence that leads, with clarity that cuts through confusion. Stoic Bloom is not just a channel, it's a space where men rebuild themselves from the inside out, where we trade emotional chaos for calm authority, where we rise, not through attention, but through action. Subscribe now, not for her, not to prove a point, but because you're finally done negotiating with your value and ready to embody it. Because when you stop chasing women and start mastering yourself, the game doesn't just change. You become the man who rewrites the rules. Stoic Bloom. Master your mind. Redefine your masculinity.